open mic. I'm going to go ahead and mute you for a second. Or there you go. You got it.
You want to introduce, since the recording just started, what is this study group about?
I will. Okay, welcome everyone. I did start the recording just a little late. Sorry, I missed out on that. But you are here at a study group on hyperautomation. And yes, it has details about the exam because we have a couple of people also that are prepared to sit for the exam or preparing for that. But welcome. We were talking about the different products that are used in hyperautomation, and one that's not listed here is also intelligent document processing that is not on this list, but it would not be on the exam. These are the elements in the exam, but I still will be covering some of that.
As of October 2024, we don't know if it will be on the exam when you're watching the recording.
It's not on the exam as of today, right? 10, 11.
Yeah, 10, no promises about next month.
Right. This is true. So when we're looking at, the products that are utilized, certain elements of the solution are going to point us into one direction or another. Obviously, a database, interacting with that database is going to put us into utilizing MuleSoft for that solution. And also we have, let me broaden this just a little bit. Also, we have as parts of it, when we want to have mundane tasks that a human will do, or if it is a website that does not have an API and you have to methodically go step by step through a process, then that's going to lean us into utilizing robotic process automation. Okay. And in that case, it would be allowing us to tell a bot exactly what we want it to do. And so we build that out through the life cycle of the utilizing RPA Manager. We go through and we build out a bot that goes step by step. And then that bot is in turn called through the orchestration of the process automation. And that bot will then do its part, bring data back together. So you see all of these things working interconnectively, integrated to where they're able to cross different boundaries, not just a simple automation, but hyperautomation in a larger scale of different organizations, different from a Mule platform, perhaps even multiple Mule platforms, over into even connecting in with Salesforce. So
can you see the Kajabi? In Kajabi, there's a raise hand thing. So I'm going to raise my hand. Can you see it? Does it show up for you?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, I had mine up. I just didn't know if you were seeing them, so I will wait.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so I'm not a hyperautomation expert, so I'm going to try to be the student in this study group. And so the way I just got was that there's like Mule Anypoint for automating systems and backend things like databases, and then RPA is more like robotic process. You brought up something called a bot. I'm sure you're going to show us more about bots, but that's a way to automate kind of things that humans do.
Correct.
With a computer.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, because I've got details on it. You'll actually see that we give it step-by-step instructions, and then it deploys as a bot. So then it is actually a bot that will be running. Now, there's some security things that we would do, or I should say the connected app to get client ID and client secret. That's for authentication for the bot. And then we have Composer also that is allowing us to use some pre-built connectors here. And then as we go across here to the other side, this is the Salesforce pieces that I mentioned. But it starts with a group of processes here that are integration pieces. These integration pieces on the Salesforce side bring the Mule API into the Salesforce platform utilizing Apex classes. So for those of you that have used Salesforce, perhaps, that is going to bring that Mule API asset directly into Salesforce to allow you to use it in the Salesforce flows themselves. Now, many of us who are experienced in Mule know that we can write Mule applications using the Salesforce connector, and that integration happens as well. So back to the slide, I bring you back here now. This is where the biggest challenge of hyperautomation and exam relevance comes in, because it'll come down to, how do I know which tool to use for the job that I'm facing, for the solution that I'm creating? And so this is a high level view of the Salesforce tools, which is Salesforce orchestration. That's going to tag different flows in Salesforce. And this is going to allow, there are benefits and features here. For example, if your client already has Salesforce and they're already using Salesforce flows, well, orchestration allows you the ability to create a business process utilizing maybe some of the flows they already have, or some of the flows out of the box that they have. So as we are building this part out as a solution, that is going to, be your Salesforce focus for records and cases and accounts and opportunities. If, depending on what cloud environment in Salesforce you're using, the integrations that are available on the for the additional product lines make it much more streamlined than it was 2 years ago when it first came out. And it just seems to be getting better and better. So the dropping down to the MuleSoft area here, as mentioned before, if there's a system that doesn't have an API, or if there's a database or large data sets, heavy transformations in the data that you need to manipulate, we have a tool called Data Weave in MuleSoft that allows us to transform data very lightweight, very streamlined. So again, that will point you in the direction of using MuleSoft for those solutions. And there are also connectors that are pre-built also in MuleSoft that we can tap into, as it's showing here for some of the connectors that exist here. So back to showing you the platform real quick. Let me grab it right here. Well, let's do it this way. There we go. So from the platform here in Exchange, there's a lot of different connectors provided by MuleSoft that can expedite the solution as well. So that's where we're seeing here in some of the connectors already pre-built, we would create solution, an API solution there. And in the use case that you'll use for the Hyperautomation course, or if you've been in my private classes, we create that API that then in turn is integrated with Salesforce to utilize it there. Again, all of those connectivity. Flow RPA, that's the robotic process automation. Again, we talked about that a little bit. If you're trying to utilize data, that is either part of a PDF form and do something with that data, this gives you that ability. I hear clerks that have to take, data from one point, copy and paste it over into another form. RPA would do all of that. And heard a story recently of someone was shared this information. They saw the demo of what it could do, and they were nearly in tears because they had done mundane work like that for so long. So anyway, that's another part of that solution of knowing when to use that. So this slide gives you a good overview of what the use case for that. And then in flow integration down here, this is actually Composer. And Composer is a low code version of utilizing some of the tools that we know that are built out on the MuleSoft side. We have some pre-built connectors. And so if we look at some of the connectors here, if we were to go in and see of adding a system action here, this is in Composer. And so it's a low code solution where you can go in and select and perhaps in your business flow here, send a message to Slack, send an email, send data to Tableau. You can also utilize the HTTP endpoint here that allows you to interact with any HTTP endpoint API. And then also notice there's a newer feature here that allows me to use my system API that I created in MuleSoft here inside Composer. So the integration that's already being available underneath all of this is what is really a positive side to having all of the hyperautomation pieces come together. Okay, more to come. Yes, Eric, go ahead.
Hi, Diane. This might be something that you speak more on. So if you're going to cover it, feel free to just let me know to wait. But I'm still a little curious as to when you're making the jump from, well, like what is considered RPA work and what is not. For example, I know in the past on a project, I've made a scheduled call to an FTP server to pull down a file and, you know, map the data in that file within a flow and maybe send some of it to a subflow if it met criteria and maybe some of it to a different flow if it met other criteria, et cetera. Eventually put it all back together and push it into Salesforce as, you know, accounts or records, financial account records, whatever it may be. When do you make the jump from building out a bunch of like decision making within a normal MuleSoft flow versus when RPA is required? I'm still a little hazy on that.
Yeah, it's a tough call, and it's primarily going to be what's going to be the best solution for your client or as it scales. Is this going to be something that, for example, in a recent decision that was made on something we were working on, was that we could use RPA for part of the solution. However, for what it actually needed to do was very minimal. So it wasn't a good fit. You know, it could have been used for that, but it really wasn't a good fit. Whereas we provided another solution for it. It wasn't even in Mule, but so some of it may be based on the resources that no one understand Mule to support that, but that's going to be really the best way to provide that solution. Or if it, you know, the return of investment of the value of it based on what is, you know, there's a cost analysis, I would say, also involved there. And that's part of the RPA offerings, is that you can do a cost analysis. What's this actually going to cost us? Is it worth it? So that would be another decision factor to take, you know, into consideration as well. So it's a tough call though, and even a tough call on some of these other areas. You know, when Salesforce can do this, but is it more efficiently that it's being handled instead by you know, actually integrating Mule into this and managing it that way if they have both platforms? And, you know, so that would be another, there's a lot of moving parts on some of these decisions here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you might need to be a sales expert as well, just so you can make those decisions.
Well, yeah. And you would want to tag in with knowing the pricing models to see value. Yeah. And Kurtu, I think, has already, you want to share too? I see your hand and Ryan's hands up too, but Kurtu, you go first.
Yeah, so I just wanted to add on to what Diane already mentioned for the decision as to when to go for RPA and when not, right? So usually RPA must be, I think, the last resort for automation. So if, for example, a solution or a problem can be solved using interfaces or APIs, then that must be the preferred way to go, because RPA is usually not as stable as interfaces because it depends on a lot of external factors. So if you automate on the GUI of an application, then if, for example, the button changes, the text font changes, then the RPA bot is going to fail, right? So the maintenance when we go for RPA is a bit high when compared to interfaces. So this is one reason. And the other reason also, like Diane explained, is also the pricing, because RPA is more expensive when compared to Anypoint or Composer. So when we have a stabler option, we always go for that. When there is no other way, when we are trying to automate a legacy system which does not offer any interfaces or APIs to allow automation, then we go for RPA, just to fill in the last bit of the process so that we can automate the process end to end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, depending on what you have the bot doing, like you say, if it's screen based, if you're using OCR, and you might have set it up one way and then that interface changes on the other end, that will cause it to fail. And so, yeah, maintenance of it would have its challenges for sure. Yes, Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, this is super helpful. I have a use case that we're looking at right now. We're all in this new study group platform called Kajabi, and we were looking at automation around Kajabi because we wanted to have things like have it tied to our, like when you join a class, something happens in a backend system and you get like a database or something. So we wanted to tie into Kajabi, and 2 years ago, or now it's 3 years ago, they took their API private and they made it Zapier only. So we have to look, how do we integrate, how do we automate Kajabi? And I really like the way you put it, Kiru, the last resort for automation. I wrote a note down for myself there because what I found is it can do it. RPA can do it. And there's no other way to do it, right? So to automate Kajabi because their API is private, right? But also RPA is not any less coding work or any less difficult to learn than Mule. So it's not like if I could do it with Mule, I probably would do it with Mule because it's easier. I mean, so RPA it's difficult and it's expensive, but it's powerful. It can do things Mule can't do. And I think IDP is a similar product for a different niche. But yeah, this is for that last mile of something we want the computer to control that currently only people can do. That's what I'm understanding. I hope I'm getting the picture right from people who are more experienced than me.
Does it seem to be more like real-time event driven as well? Is that when you would, or would it still be something that you could potentially schedule or have used as a daily or a bi-daily activity?
Do you mean RPA, Eric? Or?
Yeah, the RPA.
Yes. You can schedule it whenever you want, or you can also invoke it on demand. And I think the major part of the Hyperautomation certification is also how these two tools interact together. So like if you want to automate a process, and if 80% of it is automatable using Mule app, and the last 20% is only automatable using RPA, then you can call at the end of the Mule app an RPA bot, which is then doing the rest of the process. So this is also possible to exchange data between RPA and Mule app and a composer.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, it really it depends on how you're Kotu had said, how you are accessing it as to the real time. But it is it has its challenges. I'll say, working with it, there are some challenges associated with it, but to give you a view of what it looks like, if we're looking at processes, like this is a simple one. Log into a website, username, password, go to files, and go to a claim. So these are in the life cycle of the bot. These are the steps of the build. This is the build phase. So you would actually tell it various things to do. And of course, username and password, it even has it's encrypted. So you have, encryption present here. But in the toolbox, there are several different tools that you can use. And I wanted to point out, anything from opening a web page to keystrokes to Excel. You can manage Excel spreadsheets through here and documenting data, have the bot extract data from a website, put it into Excel, put it into a form. It can do many things. But the other thing here too is it will also interact with intelligent document processing. So this is a newer. I haven't worked with this yet. Kritu, have you worked with this within RPA?
Yes, I tried out a demo case and it's super smooth. Like just 2 activities that you're showing, Diane, and then just configure it, and then you can extract all sorts of information from documents. Yeah, it's super smooth.
Very cool. So this is another whole element that RPA brings to the table as a solution. So you can either interact with a Mule app as far as that's concerned, or you could interact with the bot. It just gives you options, I guess is a good way to look at it, right? To give you options. And to further carry this a little further, this chart was created by he's actually gotten a raise or a different promotion, but by one of the Hyperautomation instructors. But it is kind of a guideline, and you'll notice, when you're looking at a decision, even interacting with an API, it's possible, but yet you can see it's better within any point platform and Composer. So it kind of gives you a guideline. I'm not going to dive too deep in all of the different options here, but it gives you something to think about as you are looking at, what's available for certain solutions. And, big data processing, any point platform, that's going to be hands down, something that you need to do. If you're, so there are reasons that are going to put you into one direction or another. And the art of it is to, explore what the tool can do and where you go from there. Okay. So any point platform, I shared some of this already. I'm going to kind of move forward. This is the Salesforce ones, but I'm going to go for those of you who raise your hand if you're not familiar with MuleSoft at all. Raise your hand if you're not familiar with MuleSoft at all. Okay. All right. So Philip, what I'm going to do is give a quick overview on this. When we are talking about MuleSoft, we're talking about any point platform. This is any point platform that gives us an interface for us to build out a usable API. And so in the slides as we go forward, and these slides will be shared out with you, we start by designing what the specification is going to be. How are we going to interact with it? What I'm going to send in, what I want back, and what my rules are, so that's where you'll see the gets, the posts, the deletes is managing just in the design, how I'm designing this out to be for this specification. From there, this gets published into that location called Exchange that I shared earlier. And that Exchange is where not only can I have my or our team's specifications, but also MuleSoft has some assets out there that we might want to use as well. But it gives us a place to also test out our specification based on just example data that we've provided in our code, in our specification itself. So once we're satisfied with the specification or the rules of engagement, I like to call it, then we jump into Studio and we can import that in as our interface to interact with our implementation, what we plan to use for, like the example, the database. Now we need to write the flow for the database and interact with that database. So Studio builds us out our web service, our application itself that gets published into Exchange or into Cloud Hub. And that's where we can, in turn, this is the iteration of the life cycle of our API. And once we have it published to Cloud Hub or into a runtime, wherever your runtime is, there's options there, not going too deep into that. But then we need to manage it and secure this API, okay? Because we're getting live data back from our database. And so we want to use HTTPS. So we would have the TLS context defined. Also, we would use another component in RPA Manager to add policies to it. An API Manager, not RPA Manager. Let me get my terms right. So we have once it's published to Exchange or published to Cloud Hub, we'd use API Manager. API Manager allows us to manage our APIs and add policies like requiring client ID and client secret. Ryan's got some fun stuff in here, client ID and client secret. So we would manage that API. And once that is complete, then we're ready to use it, okay? And so that's the first portion of the MuleSoft side. Now we'll go into, we talked a little bit about RPA Manager. So jumping over into RPA Manager, on any point platform side, we would navigate over to RPA Manager. And in here is the life cycle of an RPA, a robotic process automation. And it begins with creating a new process. Okay. And you can use the evaluation phase. And what the evaluation phase, this is that cost analysis. Okay. So this is going to allow us to do a cost analysis and determine, is this going to be worth it? This is on the exam. You can count on it. Be familiar with this. Okay, so there's cost analysis at the top, where you would say how long this process would take, how much it would approximately cost you to do this manually, and the frequency. So you would have a monetary amount reflected here, and then you would go into qualifiers and benefits. So the qualifiers, each of these have a specific criteria that it's looking for, like the data type. Is it, just left for your interpretation, or is it actual text and numbers? And then again, under the benefits, how complex is it? Is it very complex? Does it change often? So all of these are thought processes to determine, is RPA going to be a good fit? So to answer your question on this, Eric, this is where you would analyze, what is ultimately going to be the benefit for this. Okay. And then after this is done, then as I mentioned, there are elements here where you can manage your processes. You can see a lot of the details from here that allow us the opportunity to manage the process, but it would ultimately end up going into where you create and go into your build, which is in this environment. This is the RPA builder. And so once you have an idea of what your process is going to look like I said, this one's strictly just going to a website, logging in, getting some claim information here. And so then you would code it out and write the whole process automation. And when you're satisfied with this, then it uploads back to Anypoint platform. So this is actually an environment of a virtual machine that's going to mirror image, be the exact configuration of where this bot is going to be running. Okay. And once we're satisfied with that, then we come back in here and we would be, let's see my backlog here. I should be able to pull one up. It should in turn allow me to see this bot and the process here. This one here is the life cycle of the bots. There was the design, the build. This one's actually in production. So it's now been graduated all the way to the point of being a running bot in production that I can call. So that's kind of a high level skip through. Yes, Ryan, go ahead.
I was just making sure I'm going to try to give it back to you and see if I got it. So, because by the time I get to that multicolor graph, I've already decided that I'm going to use the last or I'm exploring. I don't have any other option for automation. I'm not going to write a Mule app. I'm not, because I'm using RPA, right? I'm down to the last thing. And now we still are making a decision of whether it's worth doing. So I go to the graph thing and I decide, is it risky? Is it going to change a lot? Because it might not be worth automating. I could just have an intern or hire a temporary worker to go click on stuff and give them like a task in Jira and they go click on stuff. A human could do it or a computer could do it. So if I'm understanding right, we're putting that business analysis into RPA. So it's not just in my head. My
Correct.
team knows now that we're automating this, and here's how we came to the decision that it's worth automating, right? So that's step one.
Right.
I got, okay. And then the next step is to go define the process. Okay, we've decided it's a good idea. You're not going to go any further if it's a bad idea. You're done.
Right. And on this matrix, as you plot the course here of your qualifiers and your benefits, the matrix does not include cost, but it does include your qualifiers against your benefit.
Well, a complexity, and yes, yeah. There's a labor, to me, complexity and what's the other one I saw in there? Stability. Those are going to make somebody have a lot of work if they're high.
Right.
So yeah.
Right.
So I'm thinking labor in that case, and so I could always hire a $15 an hour temp
Right.
instead of telling the computer to do a job, right?
But to scale it, let's say you
Mhm.
have that happening for a temp,
Mhm.
and then you need to scale.
Yeah, then I got to hire 30 temps, and that
Right.
gets expensive. Yeah,
Right.
so that's
Right.
where we're trying to capture that picture here, so that we can come back as a team and look at it together. It's not just
Correct.
me with my notebook, like
Correct.
right. Okay,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then we get past there, and then you had me go to RPA Builder right away. So I'm gonna go start.
No, there's
programming.
actually another step there. I jumped. I'm watching our time.
Okay,
But yeah.
I just want
So
to follow it. Yeah.
okay, so after the evaluation is done, and it used to be you had to do a couple things here. Used to be you had to do the evaluation. You can bypass it now.
Oh,
And secondly, you can modify your qualifiers and benefits. You can customize that. Okay. So if you wanted to capture certain things that were unique for
yeah.
your organization, you can modify these.
So like for us, if we were going to automate the creation of a system that we haven't announced to the public, an account in that system, if whenever a class was joined in Kajabi, we would make one of these screens, and then we would determine it was worth it, and then what?
And then once we have determined, like it's very
Mhm.
positive, it's looking like it. The other things you have to have for it are a virtual machine to build it and a secure location for it to run. So it actually runs in a Windows-based server, ideally somewhere. And so you want to also consider that is not part of the cost on here, but in analyzing, for a client, that is consideration. Do you have a place where we're going to run these, and have those running? It's recommended to have multiple, instances. So there's various things there. And from here, then let me go to one of my backlogs here. And I only have that one. I can grab one from, nope. All right. So let me just do a new process. Hold on.
Beautiful. So there's a thing called a process that I make.
Yes. Yes.
Great.
And so from here, then I'm process owner, project manager, various things here. I can assign other people that are going to be part of the different phases of this process, or if I'm doing it all, or I could add a person who may be my designer and builder, but yet someone else is going to test and push it to production. So there's you can add other team members here. And let's see what else there is. There's a process board. That's kind of cool too. That shows you the relationship of your bots and the various bots that are out here. So you go to save here. Oh, sorry, category. This is the category for organizing where your bot is going, what category your bot will fall under. It's a organizational type of thing on the platform. So now it says I can start automating. And this is where you are in the design phase. You create a high-level design through RPA Recorder, and it will capture the step-by-step process of what your bot is doing. And that is just used as like a outline or a scaffold of what you want the bot to do. Because remember over here in Builder, this was actually what was recorded at a high, without a lot of details, just what I want the bot to do in the design. And then the next iteration is bringing it here to build it out, because what it captures at that high level, like for example, it's not securely capturing my username and password. So I want to use the encryptive feature in the business process automation here.
So it records and it does it badly, and then we need to come fix what it recorded. Does this code, whatever's behind it, that lives in the control plane of any point, or is it in a source code repository, or where does this code go?
This code, good question. It would have to be on the control plane, I would think. Kritu, do you know?
Yes, it is. It would be in the RPA manager. Yes, that is the server for us, and all the code and the version of all the code would be available only in the RPA manager. Yes.
which would in turn be the control plane.
And
The
so
code
if
platform.
if Diane and I are very excited and we both go work on the same bot, how does it keep us from messing each other up?
So let's see if Diane uploads a version before you, Ryan, and you, let's say, have downloaded a older version and you're working on that. And in the meantime, Diane has updated something already, then you will get a notification when you do some changes that the newer version is available on the manager and do you want to download it. But if you do, then all your changes are going to be replaced, overwritten. But sadly, that's how it is right now.
Yeah.
It's like Design Center,
Yeah.
where you have to take all the changes from one branch or the other. You can't merge.
Yes.
From the sounds of it, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. You need some kind of internal calls just to say, okay, don't mess with the bot. I'm working on it now. So yeah, that's sadly how.
Lock it.
I was trying to back this one back to test. It's got it locked into production. To show you that feature, because it'll ask you, you know, a previous version. Like if I were to go to the repository here, I am not seeing the one that's in production. Let's see.
This is really.
Have to. Sorry, Brian.
I just noticed because I have another project with a competing product that is automation. This is grown-ups. This is mature. This is like we share a real repository with test and staging and production, and we have everything in a centralized place. They're not like just like little desktop automation scripts. I'm getting that this is like an enterprise level automation,
Yeah.
like workflow.
Oh yeah, yeah. This one that I'm working on is see if I can get this. Is actually hitting a couple different websites, and so it's quite a bit more intense. Like if it's this, if I need to hit this website, these are my options. If I need to, there's 3 different websites here. So it can be pretty vast what it can do, as opposed to like just a simple flow that you might see in the
3 different websites. So you could snipe Taylor Swift tickets with RPA?
I could.
Oh.
Yeah. True story. So anyway, once you get done, oh, it did back it up to test. Okay, that's cool. Because I wanted to show you, let me back it up to build. I want to show you where it captured. I don't know why it didn't like it before. Come on. The initial recording, you'll see down here, the initial recording, the results of the build. So it's keeping a lot of information here. Documentation, let me click there. Okay, so this was my initial recording, right? And it's showing all the process incognito. So that was the recorded portion of it for that particular task. So there's other tasks up here. No. Okay, so like, and let's look at the documentation on this one. Did it complete out?
I didn't mean to take you way down into the weeds. I know.
I know.
I understood the workflow, and after you get this working, then you have to go run it on bots.
Right. Yeah. And so anyway, all of it ends up where it's easily to like manage and see its process here. So yeah, reeling it back in a little bit, watching our time too. You go through the life cycle of the bot. Once it's completed, then it gets deployed on a server, and it accesses that through a secured session. It is RPA. No, RDP. This is where the letters start to blend. So it's interacting with the bot, and so it's actually running on that server now.
Yeah, and I helped you set up some info for this, so I know this is not like any old. It has to be Windows.
Correct.
Yeah, that the bot runs on.
Correct. And server, a server operating system is better. It will run on Windows operating systems themselves. I think it's 11 and higher, but it's recommended. And Kurtu, have you had experience with that? I'm sure on.
Yeah. So it works, like you said, Diane, on Windows, normal Windows 10, Windows 11, but better is when you have Windows Server. That works really good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. And then, of course, on the platform, there's a way to utilize the connected app for client ID and client secret access into accessing the bot. And so that's an option of using that.
So
Yep.
from a hyper automation standpoint, now that we got a bot, I can have a Mule application use the bot to go do stuff and get answers back. That's what that connected app
Yes.
does. Right? Yeah,
Yes.
awesome.
Or even Composer, or even on the, and within Salesforce.
Yes. You can publish also a RPA bot as an API, and it would be available in Exchange. And this you can use as a connector in your Mule app to pass data back and forth. Yeah.
Yep. Actually, I think it does show up in Exchange, doesn't it? It shows up in Exchange as an asset once you put it in production.
Yes, and we need to create something called as an invocable run configuration.
Oh, yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
And then when we do this, then it would be available in Exchange. So you can create two types of configurations. One is you can schedule it to just run on a regular basis, or you can create this invocable configuration, which means that it can be invoked from any external system, also from MuleSoft. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's in the, when you go to push to production, it's in the production life cycle. Yeah. Yeah. Excellent. So to review back just a minute, our Mule app, RPA allows us to create our bots. The next step on this trip is Composer. And Composer is, again, another product that is on Anypoint platform. And many of you may have experienced Composer in the past. Again, it's a low-code environment to interact with your RPA bot configuration. You can put your details in here, interact with your bot from Composer, also interact with HTTP endpoints here. So you could utilize your APIs there. And also for notifications, Slack notifications, interacting with Salesforce. Now, a key thing in regards to Composer is you can set up a Salesforce connection for, let's say, a Marketing Cloud instance. And then you can come back in and set up configuration for a Health Cloud instance. So you could interact from Composer with two different Salesforce platforms.
So as a Muley, I'm starting to see that part of hyper automation is understanding the Salesforce side of the automation products. How important is that for the certification?
To have the Salesforce knowledge?
To have a good idea of like what the use cases are from within Salesforce.
Very.
And different
It's a big
Salesforce
part of
products,
it.
like you mentioned Salesforce marketing. Do I need to know marketing, Service Cloud?
No.
How many of those? Just
No,
platform?
just the organization, the core of Salesforce org. And we're about to get over to that side. So this again is a MuleSoft product. Now, I'll give the disclaimer, but I have heard that when this first debuted, let me put it that way, it was under Salesforce. It was an app in Salesforce when it first debuted. Then it became a separate entity, and it was more of like a MuleSoft interface. And now I still know that my app works in Salesforce because I still have that one, but now it's showing up in our Hyperautomation suite. Okay, so that's kind of its evolution. But what we've heard is that it's going to come back in under Salesforce Flow Builder utilizing the connections that we're seeing here.
So,
Okay.
so to clarify the use case here, the persona is the, oh, thank you, Victoria. Yeah, thanks. The persona who would use Composer is someone who isn't trying to write an entire Mule application. They're trying to do
Right.
some automation, but they don't want to create a software development project with a source code repository and open up Anypoint Studio. It's a lower barrier to creating some automation process.
Absolutely. It is considered a low code solution. It's a low code. Pro code is MuleSoft, where we're in the code, we're writing, we have more flexibility to write what we want because we're configuring everything we want. We're managing the transformations. This is the low code approach. And there are ways that you can transform and use functions and write, transform data, but it's not going to be your big data set, big solution. It's for a business analyst, really, or someone, we talk about trying to save time on, IT departments, right? So this gives that opportunity for someone who isn't as code savvy to come in here and be able to, write flows that do various things. So these are the connectors, pre-built connectors. And we know we can write our own connectors from our specifications. We can use other connectors and configure them more deeply if we want. But these are pre-built. And what's also available here is, for example, if-else blocks. We can write an if-else block here. We can also have error handling here. We can do for each and do a loop. So there's other things here in Composer that, again, clicks not code, but you still can do some routing and do some pretty interesting things, especially if you want to push some of this into, some of these connectors we already have pre-built. Or even in those connectors, we have some of our APIs. You can actually post to your API from here.
But the intention is that, I don't know why it's in, is it in the sort of, it doesn't seem like Composer is really designed for people to have to go take a class. It seems like it's supposed to be figured out just by opening it and figuring it out.
Well, there isn't a dedicated class for it. There are trailheads, but we do have an instructor-led segment of this in the Hyperautomation course. It's a small segment. We do a couple different flows.
And you're talking about Integration Quest course or the Trailhead Academy?
Trailhead Academy class.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. And I do it in the Hyperautomation, in the Integration Quest Hyperautomation class too.
Oh, because it sounds like we should stop. It sounds like it's easy. Am I wrong?
Well, it's good to see where the pieces of the puzzle come together. And I'll tell you, even if you look at I've got a bunch of junk here now, but like even here, this might throw some people off. How do I know what to use? Where, we're talking about some various things here. What kind of, a BA may not know what kind of authentication to use, so there's still some details there. I don't want to give someone the opinion that, oh, just jump in there. Now, a lot of it's pretty easy once you go into creating, for example, a connection in with Google, some of that's pretty easy. You just, it'll guide you right through and you're into your Google account. But it's pretty cool, that part of it. But there are some technical sides to it too that I think, would require some coaching. Let's put it that way. So that brings us to the conclusion of the MuleSoft players of this game. So again, we've got the life cycle of the API, we've got robotic process automation, we've got Composer, and also IDP, right? Intelligent document processing. Now let's switch gears and look at what we're going to have available for us on the Salesforce side, which out of the box, Salesforce and a Salesforce org, we've got the Salesforce flows. And those are a matter, I call them flow charts on steroids because it looks like a flow chart, but it actually is doing something along the way with those flows. And then flow orchestration. And in the flow orchestration, it's actually tagging the flows. But before we get to any of that, one thing we really want to emphasize here is the integration between MuleSoft and Salesforce. Okay. And when we have a Salesforce account, Let me see. Let me get on a Salesforce account here 1 second. Okay. All right. On a Salesforce account here. Oh, seriously? Let's see. Okay. So within Salesforce, once you have a Salesforce org, then we would come into this to do the first step of an integration. And the first step of the integration would be using the MuleSoft as a service. Okay. So if I do MuleSoft, after I go into the setup menu, go into MuleSoft, there's MuleSoft services. And what this allows us to do is to log into an Anypoint platform account. Now you can only have, again, here's one of those exam or client restrictions, is you can only log into one account. I can't have multiple MuleSoft accounts here. I can only have one. Okay. So once I do that, once I click on it, and I'm already logged into one, but once I click on it, it's going to automatically do some things. And so, Francis, remember this for the exam. When you're using and logging on to Anypoint platform, it'll automatically create your external credentials in Salesforce, your named credentials, and your permission sets. Okay, now what does that mean? That means that when we're logging in here, it's giving it a name credential, kind of high level. It's telling us what that external credential is and what the authentication method will be, creating a permission set for that automatically as well. And then it completes the provider and creates your authentication provider. So when I do this and have done this on this account, it automatically, if I type in external for external credentials, oh, it's going to come in under named. Hold on. Yeah, if you search for named credentials, I see I have Anypoint platform. It automatically created that. Okay. And you can do this if you want to go through some processes. You can go through this and see how it'll automatically populate that in. And so under the Anypoint platform name credential, I can click on the external credentials here and see that this was all populated just by me logging into Anypoint platform. When this first came out, we had to do all of this manually. Okay. So it populates all this in, tells the authentication type, the details of what it needs for, because it's OAuth 2, manages all that for us. So the next step, in order to utilize, of course, it also did the permission set. There's all kind of stuff that it did. So it handled all of that for me. Now, if I want to also bring in an API, I have to do this myself. It automatically happens when I log into the platform, but now I want to choose a certain API to populate into the Salesforce platform. So this is the integration piece again. And this is going to be where we create the external credentials first, telling it what kind of authentication we're going to use. Then we do a name credential pointing to the API on the MuleSoft side, and then create the permission sets associated with that API. Now, what that does is, in this case, let me go back to name credentials. I brought in this API here. I created the basic auth, and all of this has been completed. I did the permission sets and all that manually. But what it does, the beauty of it is once this part is done, and there is one other final step here, is then to import it as an API. So you set it up for that integration. And then the next step is to actually import it into Salesforce. And so what that looks like here, if I go to the services, from this page, I could import another API if I had another one out there. And I could choose the APIs that are in that MuleSoft platform. I can select any of these that I would want that in turn would be brought into Salesforce. Okay, close. Oh yeah, I want to close it. There we go.
Wait, there's a hand up.
Yes, Eric.
Diane, I haven't used MuleSoft services before, but I'm just curious at what stage, or if at all, it's using, like, is it using a license? So for example, you did the MuleSoft service setup, and now you're showing that final step of actually calling out for an API. In my experience, we actually created a MuleSoft user, which we obviously had to assign a license. And I know since 2023, Dreamforce, every org should have 5 API licenses for free, I believe. So is that MuleSoft service set up using one of those licenses, or do you use those licenses when you actually go in and select a specific API? Do you know any kind of details on that?
It is not. Okay, well, it is using a MuleSoft login. So there is, in our case, when we're using it professionally, we set up a service account to make this integration piece happen, right? But that's a MuleSoft account. But on the Salesforce side, I don't know if it's actually using
one of those API licenses or not.
Yeah, I do not know. Great question.
Okay.
Yeah. Kurtu, do you know?
I'll have to dig into that. It's curious.
No, I'm also not aware. From the MuleSoft side, I know the licensing stuff, but not from the Salesforce side. So not sure.
Yeah. I'll ask Ryan, jot that down in the chat for me, or in our chat, Slack.
Already done.
Cool. I'll see what I can find out on that, because it's not tethered to a particular user, to my knowledge, in Salesforce. This is kind of organization wide.
So there's no specific user with a license attached to it that is kind of navigating that traffic, that you would have logs for logging in, and you would be able to put a console, like developer console, to kind of track all the activity for that user. It's not doing that.
It's showing created by, but I don't know that it's attached to a certain user here, other than the MuleSoft side, because it now becomes available as
in the study group. I think there's a place we can put the answer to the question. So I think we'll research it, and we can attach it to this. I think session.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I don't want to sidetrack us too much.
No, it's a great question though. Ask those questions. Those are the things we want to do in a study group. Like, what about this? This MuleSoft connection here is relatively new. I have not used the MuleSoft connections manage here. So that is another element that I want to investigate. But for the API, we go through that same process like I showed you on the other slide. We'd have to go through each one. Now, I understand they're going to be making this more streamlined as well. But this is an API that I created on a Mule platform with these different endpoints. And so what it does now allow is it, first of all, creates an Apex class for these endpoints and allows me to interact with these endpoints from a Salesforce flow. So let me go over now to the to flows. And see if I have a test here. Goodness. So on this side, in the Salesforce flows, this now allows me to interact with that Mule API. And here I have get, I'm using the get insurance customers. So it's getting all of the customers on that database. And so I could also have used the post or get by ID, whichever. But I'm going to go ahead and run this in debug mode. And this was just a simple example to show. This is an auto launch flow, so it will run auto launch based on when I choose to run it. The get insurance customers is now going to show us these are the customer files off of that Mule database. Okay, so this is happening directly here inside of Salesforce Flow.
And I know we didn't present Salesforce Flow, but this is not the same as Composer. This is a Salesforce side automation tool, right? Salesforce Flow is meant as a low code automation part of the Salesforce platform that is only useful within Salesforce accounts, right?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yep.
And there's, like I said, to me, it reminds me of flowcharts on steroids. So this shows that the integration we created brings this data, whether it's a get or post or update, whatever, or patch, whatever we want to do, directly inside of Salesforce now. In the flows category, so we can go into Salesforce and go into flows, and they're out of the box. If you create a developer account, you'll see all of these flows. Many of these flows are available for you to utilize and take a look at to use. And so inside here, there are different types of flows, and this is exam relevant. There are screen flows. Let's take a look at a screen flow here real quick. Change owner. Let's look at this one. Okay, so these are flows out of the box built that you can use and modify and create a copy of or whatever. But again, it's this one's a screen flow. And so what would happen is it would, you have different tools that you can use within a screen flow that allow you to manage your data flow. And having, a decision, you've got various things, does the incident exist? If so, come over here and go this route, right? And likewise, if not, so there's various things here. You can create your flows directly. So these are the Salesforce flows. Now, things you need to know exam relevant wise is that there are different types of flows. And the different types of flows are going to have a bearing on what that flow can do. Okay. And I'm going to bring that up again when we go to flow orchestration. So there are screen flows, there are evaluation flows, okay, that evaluate that something occurred or not, auto launch flows, and then you're going to also see orchestration flows. Okay. So the screen flows, if it's a screen flow, that means it's interacting with a user with a screen. And so the user has to provide data back and forth on that process for that flow. So the auto launch flows, very much like the one that I shared, is going to be invoked when I invoke it. Okay, so it's going to be launched when I tell it to start running the flow. It's an auto launch flow. So when it comes to, first of all, when we ran this in debug mode, a couple of things happen. It starts giving us the detailed information of what happened in this debug. Okay, these are called interviews. Okay, so the interview is part of the debug process. It's considered to be an interview. Another element over here on the left-hand side is your toolbox. And in your toolbox, you're going to see the resources used. This is an Apex defined collection of our customers. We created that. We have an action of get insurance customers. So you're seeing on the left-hand side the various things that are listed as part of your flows, needs of what it needs. Your variables will be listed here, all kind of details here. So now next level, not only can we use that data in our flows, but next level is a flow orchestration. So if we create a new flow and we want to start from scratch, not a template, this is going to be where we can choose the type of flow we want. Yes, Ryan, go ahead.
I don't want to spoil it, but I just want to give. There's really only have 2 more minutes of new stuff, and then we have to wrap up. So you know.
You doing my time clock on me?
I'm trying to help you.
So there's different types of flows. Okay, there's a screen flow. We showed that one. Scheduled flow. That could be a scheduler. Auto launched. Record trigger. Something happens with a record that triggers a flow. So there's many things you can do. A platform event triggers a flow. Then there's orchestration. Okay, so for studying for the exam, get familiar with the type of flows that there are, but know there's the special one, which is a orchestration flow. Now there's auto-launched orchestration also. There's different things that you, as far as that's concerned. We're going to go with record triggered just because it's kind of fast, and we'll click on create. So we're going to pretend that something has happened. Like a record, record has opened or a case is open or something like that. Something has occurred. So we would tell it what would be the creation here. We can just say an account record is there. So is that going to be happy? Yeah. We can set some conditions also that it's a certain record at a certain type of status. But what happens here once we have configured the start is we can come in here and there are options of either a stage. We also have an option of a decision. Okay. So we have stages and decisions in the flow orchestration. And a stage is going to be things that occur in sequences. Like I can add a stage here on a decision. Okay. Like if this doesn't occur, then I want to do this stage. If this occurs, then I want to run this stage. And the stages are a series of steps. You have a background step. That's going to be an auto-launched flow that occurs whenever you want it to occur. You can have an interactive step. The interactive step is going to have to be a screen flow because it's interactive. Okay, so depending on the type of steps that you add to your stage or to your stage are going to be what it's the orchestration. It's orchestrating the flows. So you're going to have step by step. Now you can have these steps organized synchronous and force them. Like I can say this interactive step has to start when that previous step has completed. Or I can say, okay, I'm going to add another one, another background, and it can start when the stage starts. So you can manage the control of your steps. Okay.
So now like this flow needs to have a step of wrapping up the whole study group at the end of our flow.
Okay. So there is a slide deck that I'll share with you that covers a lot of what we shared to go over some of the details. But in conclusion, there's some great resources on the in Trailhead Academy, or reach out to us. We'll be glad to share some of those with you or do some coaching things as well. I've done a lot of coaching for passing this certification. And so are there any questions before we wrap for the day?
I have a quick question. You mentioned that you do some coaching. How do you get students hands-on with RPA? Because I don't think that it's available with like a trial org, is it?
It is not. We have the platform account that one of the platform accounts I was sharing with you is Integration Quest platform.
Okay.
And so we do coaching on that.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one, because you can't do it through a trial account or anything. And even going through the trailheads on Trailhead Academy, it's kind of like it's not a hand. It is a little bit of a hands-on, but it's not. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but yeah. So we can help you out with that.
So I have a couple wrap-up things. So you guys are on the new study group platform. These study groups are automatically recorded, and because you registered for this, you can access all the past. We have one of the past study groups in there, and everyone going forward is going to be in there. And we might continue to try to improve the way that this new platform works. As you saw, we're still figuring it out as well, but you're in now. So if you don't be surprised when you get a reminder email that the next study group's coming up. We're not trying to spam anybody. We're learning how the platform works and everything.
Yeah.
But we just try to have a learning community here where we and so we're actually interested in also your thoughts on what study groups we should have. We're really into integration and automation, and we'd love to know what you want to learn about. So we can organize another study group. And if you want to lead one, if you're really into something, maybe you can ask us and we can work together. We've had guest study group leaders in the past.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Thank you all so much. We
Mhm.
appreciate you joining us today and wrapping 1 minute early. Because Ryan get me on track. I can go for hours. I'm used to doing a whole week-long class on this. So to limit it in such a small period of time makes it challenging. But we're also really into the intelligent document processing that's part of this. So more to come on a lot of the details on that too. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank you.
everyone have a wonderful day. Enjoy your Friday. Yep. Thank you.
I see your hand, Kira. Go ahead.
I just reacted wrongly, Ryan. I wanted to clap, but then I raised my hand
We
instead.
can clap together.
I'd love for you to share, Kurtio. I would love for you to do a segment.
Oh,
So,
thank you, Diane. Sure.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can plan it. Yep.
Okay. Sounds great. Sounds great. Well, thank you so much. And just reach out to us if you have any further questions or comments that you'd like to share. Definitely would love to hear from you. All right. Have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy
Thank
your
you.
Friday.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.